So, here's a bit of a scoop. You are the first outside of Koolhaus and EA to get some screen grabs of vintage voltage. And I'm just going to go through these fairly quickly to give you an idea. It is a throwback to, this is the UI getting into it from within the game. And it is a throwback to the old electronic tabletop football games. And we're really excited about this. EA is very excited about this. The gameplay is awesome. And it looks very, very cool. It's a lot of fun to play. And for the iPad, it's a natural because it is a tabletop device. And yes, we do have multiplayer. So many people can play at the same time. You can play through Wi-Fi as well. We're very excited to see there's a top-down view as well where you can select your plays, and also a side view where you can select your plays as well. So there you go, ladies and gentlemen. You are the first outside of Koolhaus and EA to get an early glimpse of this. It should be coming out within the next 2 weeks, and we're looking forward to getting feedback from everybody on what the game is about. Thank you very much. I hope that was Thank you. Let's open up the floor to questions. Yes? I think there's a microphone coming.
So you do your CSA at the end of each milestone you mentioned, right?
Yep.
So how long are your milestones and how long is your process for the CSA in the team size?
It's a good question. It depends on the project. On a shorter project, milestones will be shorter. So on a longer project, a console project that might be a year and a half, 2 years, it'll be typically every month. And so every month we will do at least one CSA. On a shorter project, such as Madden, NFL, iPad, milestones were 2 and 3 weeks. And so sometimes if there was a 2 week spread, we waited until the next milestone, so we had either 3 or 4 weeks or 5 weeks time period in between. The time to turn around the CSA, one of the cool things about it is it's very lightweight. And the thing that you don't want to do with any process is burden down the development. Okay, slow down development. You want to do that. And that's the cool thing about the CSA process. It doesn't do that. We turn around everything in the CSA process, getting feedback from everybody, analyzing that feedback as managers, making priorities of the top 5 issues, bring that back to the whole team and discussing that, and also implementing solutions and having people to be accountable for those solutions within a period of time and have a time frame that. All of that's done within a week. Okay? So it's really important that you turn it around very quickly. And the CSA process is lightweight enough to be able to do that. Does that answer your question? All right. Some more questions?
Actually, 2 questions. Just as a follow-up to Frederick's question. I mean, the CSA sounds a lot like a sort of a sprint review type approach. Are you not using Scrum or Agile, or are you using more of a traditional waterfall type?
We've always, CSA came about actually before Scrum and Agile became popular. I developed the process while I was working at Radical, which now goes back, I guess, about 10 years. And so at Koolhaus, yes, we do something like a Scrum. We meet every morning briefly. We don't really do Agile and full bore. To do full bore Agile, basically there's a lot of paperwork, a lot of filling out of stuff, and developers just don't like doing that. Nobody does when it comes down to it, so we don't do Agile to that.
But you have your sort of the Koolhaus methodology,
that's right.
Let's call it, that is somewhat Agile-like and iterative as opposed to creating a 2-year Gantt chart or something.
Exactly. Right. Yeah. So we do use, sorry to interrupt, but we do use Microsoft Project and other project management tools when it comes down to it. But yeah.
All right. So a completely different topic. At the beginning of the presentation, you mentioned the importance of marketing. Kind of in the context of, hey, the publishers will always have a role to play.
Yes.
What are your thoughts in terms of, if you're talking about publishers primarily serving this role of marketing and promotion, why not, as an independent developer, just hire a specialist marketing and PR firm to, as a sort of a service as opposed to getting in bed with a publisher for that functionality?
Sure, absolutely you can do that. The problem is, there's a few problems. One is cash to pay those particular people. It's very expensive to market, extremely expensive. For example, I'll give you an example of Radical, where at Radical we came up with an original game, and I can't tell you what that is, and we got partial publisher funding for it. It was a co-published venture, where Radical had to put up half the development budget, and the publisher had to put up the other half. And a year into the project, the publisher canceled the project because that game was a platformer. And in order to properly market a platformer game, at that time you had to spend between $10 and $15 million. So there's not that many developers out there who've got $10 to $15 million to market.
So think of maybe some of the small platforms like iPad and iPhone.
It doesn't change the parameters. To market, if you've noticed, how many have played Angry Birds? Right? Cut the Rope. Okay? Those two games are at the top of the charts, but they're published. They're published by Chilingo, and they're just bought by EA. Okay? So that tells you something. Yes, there are some games that get to the top of the iTunes chart that don't have a publisher, that are independent, but those are the 1 in a million garage band stories. And yes, that could happen to you, but the reality is 99.9% of the time, you need to have that marketing spend, and you need to have that publisher on your side. Some more questions?
Wolfgang, what asset control system do you use Perforce or anything?
I've used Perforce at EA and Radical as well. We use Subversion, SVN, which is open source. It's free. It's very stable. And this is one of the great things about being in this industry. You can use open source, free version control software and other software like it as well to get you off the ground and get you going with very, very little cash outlay, if any at all. And there's other companies, larger companies as well, that use Subversion, SVN. Highly recommended. It's open source, so you can change it, you can modify it. There you go. Some more questions? Great.
You mentioned earlier that Koolhaus Games, you don't think you have the communication issues other studios do that you've been at. What do you think that you do differently or you do right to make that happen?
To have better communication, you mean?
Yeah.
I think it starts with the hiring process. We have a pretty stringent hiring process. There are, on the technical side, for example, there are people who've been in the industry for 7-10 years who have not passed our technical test. And so just even on the coding side, we make sure that we hire people who are absolutely competent in what they do. The same thing for art. We have similar tests for artists and similar tests for designers as well. And we also have management tests for people who are on the management side of things. So part of that equation of that interview process is communication. How well do potential hires that we bring on board, or potential teammates at Koolhaus, how well do they communicate? And we have a little test that will demonstrate their communication style and whether they will fit in with our culture and so on and so forth. So I think it starts with the hiring process to begin with. Then what we do internally as well is we do have other processes besides the critical stage analysis process. We meet on a regular basis. It's short, but nonetheless, there we are. We communicate in all different styles. Tasks, for example, that get out there. We just don't have one way of communicating those tasks. We have whiteboards. We have electronically on a wiki. We have printed out Excel spreadsheets. We have Microsoft Project. We have Agilo, which is another tool. Project.net, which is another tool. We have a variety of different tools so that everyone who's working on the project has a way that they would like to see that task and be able to communicate how that task is progressing. Okay? So it's not just one way, because everybody's different. Everybody likes to see it in a different format. Okay? So we have options for people to choose from. And we also, we don't have artists in one group, in one corner of the studio, and programmers in another place. What we do is we have functional groups. So on each particular project, they sit together as per the project. So we'll always have an artist, a designer, and a programmer sitting together within reach of each other. So if there's an issue, if the artist is checking their work in and they're having problems seeing it in the game, they can just turn around and talk to the programmer who's right there. And the same thing with the designer and so on and so forth. So functional groups for us really works, as opposed to having an art team over there and so on and so forth. So I think those are some of the things that I think can facilitate communication in Koolhaus. And the other thing is that it's an atmosphere of where there's never one way to do things, and we encourage everyone to contribute. We encourage absolutely everyone to contribute to the game. When I'm talking about game design, I'm talking about we have regular open game design meetings where we encourage everyone to show up and to contribute to that particular game that they're working on. And it doesn't matter if you're a co-op or an intern. We encourage you to come to those meetings and contribute to the game itself, as opposed to just the art, the code, so on and so forth. So it's a regular kind of atmosphere at Koolhaus where there's a regular sharing. I can't remember the last time somebody yelled at Koolhaus. I can't. We seem to be able to communicate effectively in an adult way. We are very passionate about what we do. We have long discussions about features. We have lots of discussions about vintage voltage, for example, design. Very passionate about that. We use the 6 hats process of meetings. Is anybody familiar with that? Yep. So, you have a green hat that is for creativity, and everybody's wearing the green hat at that time. And so it cuts down on conflict. There's a time for black hat thinking, which is critical thinking, but that comes later. Then we're all doing it when it comes down to it. And so we're all creating together, we're all organizing together, we're all analyzing together as a group. And I think those kinds of things facilitate communication in Koolhaus. Hope that answers the question. Go on. Is that it? Okay. Thank you very much.